back to the Comparison Group Podcast. Another exciting show in store for you today. Going to talk a little bit about my man, Bernie Sanders. Going to rip into him a little bit. Some people will enjoy that, some people won't. I'm also going to break some news on the Comparison Group Podcast. That's right, I'm going to have a Comparison Group Podcast exclusive. So let's start the show. So before I get to Bernie, let me first thank everyone for their comments. Comments always help me to know if I'm on track, if I'm off track. Some people enjoy the show, some people don't enjoy the show, and that lets me know I'm on track. When people agree, when people disagree, that's the way it's supposed to be. Some comments I got informed me that people were somewhat skeptical when I say that conservative media personalities are defending themselves in court from libel by saying people are not supposed to believe what they say. So I will post to the website, thecomparisongroup.com, the articles about Tucker Carlson and Alex Jones. Tucker Carlson defended himself in court against a libel lawsuit against a woman that Trump had an affair with, allegedly had an affair with. Tucker Carlson called her some names, said, I think she was out for money, and she sued, and his lawyers went to court arguing that people aren't supposed to believe what Tucker Carlson says on his show. So I'll post that article, and these are court records that the article is citing. As far as Alex Jones, I'll put an article up that outlines what Alex Jones is all about. I've come to find that not a lot of people who don't really pay much attention to conservative media may not even know Alex Jones, may not know what he's all about, but he has also gone to court and argued that what he says shouldn't be taken seriously. He had a court case where, in a divorce case, it was, where his lawyers argued that he was just an entertainer. He was just a personality. He wasn't someone that was supposed to be taken as a source of information. But if that's not enough for you, if those articles, if you can't take my word for it, let's listen to a lawyer for, I believe, 3 people, could be 6, but I believe it's 3 people that stormed the Capitol on January 6th. One of them was the guy that was running around in the horns, known as the shaman. Let's take a listen to the lawyer in an interview on CNN, and let's see how he defends his clients.
So the attorney for Jacob Chansley, the so-called QAnon shaman who stormed the Capitol on January 6th, is drawing criticism over remarks he made when he was talking about the defense strategy for his clients. I want to warn you, this is offensive, but they are his words. Albert Watkins says, quote, a lot of these defendants, and I'm going to use this colloquial term, perhaps disrespectfully, but they're all effing short bus people. These are people with brain damage. They're effing retarded. They're on the goddamn spectrum. But they're our brothers, our sisters, our neighbors, our co-workers. They're part of our country. They aren't bad people. They don't have prior criminal history. They were subjected to 4+ years of goddamn propaganda, the likes of which the world has not seen since effing Hitler. And Albert Watkins joins me now. Counselor, the Special Olympics says the R word is a form of hate speech and that the word has become an insult used all too commonly in everyday language. Would you like to apologize this morning?
No.
How does offending millions of Americans help your clients?
And you know what? For 5 months, I acted professionally. I talked to the people that needed to know. I made sure that the Department of Justice had the opportunity firsthand to meet with my client, the guy who was shirtless, with horns, tattoos, a fur, to have them understand and appreciate the condition, the special needs of my client, which get vulgar in a short, sound bite-driven quote that permitted this very issue.
You can get attention by setting your hair on fire. Doesn't mean you should do it.
So I'll apologize, as John Berman did, for that language, for the use of those words, but you got to hear it. You got to hear it. This is the defense. This is the lawyer, the attorney for 4 of the people. It was 4, actually. He said it in an interview. 4 of the people that stormed the Capitol. That's the defense, that they're brain damaged, amongst other offensive things. Don't hold me responsible for the things that I do. This is clearly a longer discussion for another time. An attorney that defends himself, defends his language by saying, I was forced to get vulgar, to get attention on CNN. An attorney that defends his clients by calling them all sorts of offensive names. A TV host from the #1 cable news network, one of the top two hosts on the #1 cable news network defends himself in court by saying, don't believe what I say. And another conservative media personality who defends himself in court by saying, you're not supposed to take me seriously. Clearly, these are some things that need to be discussed. But now's not the time. Let's move on to Bernie Sanders. And let's do that by me playing this 1 minute and 30-second clip of Bernie Sanders and then spend the next 18 hours dissecting it because it drives me crazy. I'm going to play it all the way through, and then I'm going to play it again and stop it and take it point by point.
A number of Republican senators have said they are discontinuing the $300 a week federal supplement to unemployment insurance because they say it's a disincentive to work. There are stories out there that businesses are having trouble hiring people, and if you take out this $300 a week, more people will, I suppose to be colloquial, get off their ass and go to work. It's fascinating to me, Senator, that's where we think. When we have problems to solve, we think we go after the people who are unemployed at the moment. That's where we think the golden pot of money is.
Well, Ali, as you may have seen, in those instances in Pennsylvania and elsewhere where employers have raised wages, you know what? They're no longer having a labor shortage. The problem is not a labor shortage. The problem is that all over this country, workers are being asked to work for starvation wages. Women often do not have the child care that they need. People are still worried about being exposed to COVID. But what we have got to do is say to workers, you want to go out and get a job, that's fine. We're going to pay you a living wage. And when we do that, guess what? There is no labor shortage. And what the Republicans are saying by trying to do away with this supplement on top of unemployment is we're going to starve you back to work. Whether you like it or not, you're going to be forced to go back to work. My view is pay people a living wage. They will work.
Now, I can hear people out there right now. How could you possibly have a problem with anything he just said? How could I have a problem with anything Bernie Sanders just said right there? Well, I'm going to tell you how I have a problem with what Bernie Sanders just said, and we're going to do it point by point. Let's play it again, just the Bernie Sanders portion of it, and let's take it point by point.
Well, Ali, as you may have seen, in those instances in Pennsylvania and elsewhere where employers have raised wages, you know what? They're no longer having a labor shortage.
Bernie loves to do this. Bernie loves to take a sliver of an example and use that to make his broader point. Pennsylvania doesn't have a labor shortage. Pennsylvania raised its wages, and now it doesn't have a labor shortage. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm going to take labor shortage to mean, Pennsylvania has low unemployment. People are working. Well, do you know what the most recent unemployment rate in Philadelphia, a city in Pennsylvania, is? 12.2%. 12.2%. More than 4 points higher than the national average. So when Bernie Sanders cites a statistic like Pennsylvania raised its wages and now they don't have a labor shortage, is Bernie Sanders referring to Western Pennsylvania, where they're doing quite well from, guess what? Natural gas, which Bernie Sanders vehemently opposes. So Bernie Sanders just took a state that's doing well economically in part of the state for something he's against and ignored the fact that there is very high unemployment in Philadelphia.
The problem is not a labor shortage. The problem is that all over this country, workers are being asked to work for starvation wages.
Starvation wages. Bernie loves this one. He loves saying starvation wages. People are being paid starvation wages. Well, I have the solution, Bernie. If someone is making $7.25 an hour, the federal minimum wage, and they work 40 hours a week, let's just say for argument's sake, after taxes, they're taking home $250 a week. Buy food. Use that money to buy food. Take that $250 a week and buy yourself something to eat. That way, you won't starve. That way, you're not working for a starvation wage. Well, wait a second. Can I buy a car? No. No, you can't. Well, can I rent an apartment? Probably not. Not in most parts of this country. Can I start a family? Absolutely not. No, you cannot. Do not have children. Well, wait a second. I can't. No, we're talking about starvation. This is how I'm keeping you from starving. So let's stop saying people are being paid a starvation wage. If you're making a wage, make the first priority in your life to buy food, and you won't starve. Now, I know it seems like I'm being harsh here, but I don't like the rhetoric from Bernie Sanders and the way he tries to make things sound. No one is starving in this country because they're working. There are other factors at play that make people go to bed hungry when they're working. And sometimes, maybe even a lot of times, it's not because the government isn't doing enough. It's because of some personal problems the individual has in their own lives. And by the way, I haven't even mentioned that if you do make $250 a week, you probably qualify for SNAP, for supplemental nutrition assistance. So you know what? Take that whole $250 and spend it as needed. You don't have to spend any money to keep from starving from your wages. The government assistance is already there.
Women often do not have the child care that they need. People are still worried about being exposed to COVID. But what we have got to do is say to workers, you want to go out and get a job, that's fine. We're going to pay you a living wage. And when we do that, guess what? There is no labor shortage.
Okay, raising wages does not create jobs. I will say it one more time. Raising wages does not create jobs. The same way I say to conservatives, to Republicans, lowering taxes does not create jobs. Cutting regulations does not create jobs. What creates jobs? Demand. Demand creates jobs. Now, of course, you can say, well, if you pay people more, they will spend money, businesses will make money, that will create jobs. If you cut taxes, businesses will have more to invest, they'll have more to hire, that creates jobs. You can certainly say that, and that certainly does work in some instances. I'm not a person who is completely against increases in wages. I'm not someone who's completely against cutting taxes. I concede that point to hopefully make it easier for you to accept what I'm going to tell you. It's about competition. It's about competition. In order for Bernie Sanders' plan of simply raising wages to create jobs or to get people back to work, everyone has to play by the same rules. Everyone is in competition, not only for customers, but also for labor. If I'm competing with someone for a highly skilled position, well, I have to offer them more. I have to offer them higher wages. I have to offer them all sorts of perks and benefits because there's competition for that person. If I'm competing for someone who's less skilled, an unskilled laborer, there's no competition. So if the person I'm competing with can get a worker for half of what Bernie Sanders wants to mandate me to pay, and that particular company is not playing by the rules, they're using illegal workers, they're using family members, how do I compete? What do I do when they underbid contracts? How do I compete with a company that makes millions of dollars and has been established? Maybe they can afford to pay a $15 an hour wage, but I'm a small-time startup company. That's why so many businesses fail. Maybe I can't afford a high-priced accountant or lawyer to get me around the tax code or regulations. How do I compete, Bernie? If you want me to get on board, if you want people who are center-left, center-right to get on board, Bernie Sanders has to start acknowledging you just can't keep saying, if we raise wages, people will work. If we raise wages, people will work. Because anyone who's actually been in business for 5 minutes knows that's not the case.
Republicans are saying, by trying to do away with this supplement on top of unemployment, is we're going to starve you back to work. Whether you like it or not, you're going to be forced to go back to work. My view is pay people a living wage. They will work.
Now, I have no doubt that Republicans are not eager to spend any portion of their budget to help people who don't traditionally vote for them. I don't doubt that. But how much government intervention is too much? How much government intervention and subsidizing should there be? My answer is just enough, and not anymore. Let's look at the numbers. If you get the minimum wage that Bernie Sanders would like to see people get, $15 an hour, and you work 40 hours a week, that's $600 gross. Before taxes, $600. After taxes, let's say it's about $515. Well, if you're on unemployment and the average unemployment payment is roughly about $250, and then you get the $300 supplemental, how much is that? That's $550. So $550 to not work or $515 to work? What if you even make that more realistic rate right now for some of these lower skilled positions? And I don't say that to insult anyone. That's just a term, I guess. Maybe I'll try and figure out a better term than lower skilled, but you know what I mean. $12 an hour. What if you work a position where you make $12 an hour, 40 hours a week? Well, now that's $480 after taxes. Let's call it around $412. So $412 versus $250 plus $300, $550. Will I stay home for $550 or will I go to work for $412? Let me think about that for a minute. So as I say, your position on policy often depends on your position in life. I'm quite sure if I was in the position in life where I was out of work because of COVID, I would certainly be wanting and taking that supplemental unemployment check. I absolutely would. I don't begrudge anyone who does that. I have a problem with Bernie Sanders for not recognizing the longer you continue to offer that benefit, the longer people will rightly take it and they will not go back to work. So saying that there is no labor shortage is just simply not correct. And listen, I don't tell you these things as a guy who doesn't understand struggle. I know struggle. I grew up in the hard knock streets of the upper middle class. When I went away to college, I had to stay in the dorms. I couldn't afford an off-campus apartment. When I went away to the Bahamas on spring break, I had to stay in a hotel that was 3 blocks away from the beach, not on the beach. Do you know how hard it is to stumble back to your hotel drunk at the end of the night? So I know struggle. But has the Democratic Party gotten out of control with this progressive push from the likes of Bernie Sanders, AOC, and Elizabeth Warren, forcing Joe Biden's hand? I submit to you, starting July 15th of this year, there are people who will begin to receive up to a $1,000 a month check from the government because of the new child care tax credit. $1,000 a month. But they will also receive an additional $6,000, up to some people, up to $6,000 additional tax refund next year. This is all part of the new child care tax credit. Depending on how many children you have, you may receive anywhere from $250 to $500 to $1,000 additional every month starting on July 15th. I asked you, are you telling me that's not going to de-incentivize some people to go back to work? Particularly when I understand some of these jobs to go back to are not exactly a job as a beer taster or an ice cream critic. They're horrible jobs. They're not great jobs. So I get it. So a choice between staying home, making more, or going back to a job you hated and making less. Listen, there are people who turn down promotions and additional salary or additional pay simply because the additional money doesn't motivate them. Maybe they're motivated by having more free time. Maybe they're motivated by having the opportunity to spend time with their family. But it's been said, people don't work to make money. People work to make money because of what the money provides for them. So if the government is kicking in to provide a lot of things for people, they don't need to provide it for themselves, which means they don't need to work. I understand that Bernie Sanders means well. I really do. And again, I don't completely and totally disagree with all of the sentiment behind his ideas, if that's the proper word, probably isn't. But I get what he's trying to do. But I have to ask how a man in his position, and a man in his position for so long, could seem to has never sat down with anyone from the other side of the spectrum, from the corporate world, from small businesses, from companies that have to deal with and hire labor and pay labor. How is it that he seems to have no perspective from the other side? You're telling me he's never sat down at a table and asked the question, why is paying a higher wage such an issue? He's never had an occasion to ask a business owner, well, don't you understand if you pay a higher wage, you'll make more money? And been told, well, no, Mr. Sanders, that's not quite the way it works. But then again, maybe I'm just seeing it wrong. Maybe someone can explain to me. I'm willing to listen to anyone who'll explain to me why I'm seeing this wrong, because I'm someone who believes even Jeff Bezos, are you telling me that because Jeff Bezos is a billionaire and because Amazon makes the kind of revenue they make, he's obligated to pay his workers higher, even if the going rate, the average of warehouse workers all across this country is, let's say, $15 an hour. You're telling me he's required to pay $30 just because he makes more money? Are you telling me that McDonald's should pay their workers a higher rate because they're a huge company, but a small mom and pop hamburger pizza place, they pay less because they make less? That's just not the way it works. Labor is a commodity, and businesses pay what they pay based on the supply and demand of labor. I could go on, but I'm starting to beat a dead horse here. I promised you an exclusive, so let's get to the comparison group exclusive. We should be, or maybe are aware, that the House passed a bill to create a January 6th commission to look into the Capitol Hill riots. It passed the House. It's not expected to pass the Senate. Tim Ryan really gave it to the Republicans. It was a pretty good clip. If you haven't seen it, I recommend checking it out. Tim Ryan from Ohio, maybe? I'm not sure what state he's from. But what I really like in the clip, everyone likes the fact that he yelled at the Republicans, but what I actually really like in the clip is it is another Democrat now, a third Democrat. O'Biden said it. Oh, excuse me. O'Biden. Why does everybody do that? O'Biden. Obama, Biden, and now Tim Ryan. A third Democrat saying to Republicans, we need you. We need a Republican Party. We need a sensible Republican Party in this country. And I like that. I hope that more Democrats will pick up on that and make that their position. Not that the Democrats are crazy or horrible. Or, well, okay, we get it. We know they're a little bit off the rails right now. But instead of beating them up about being off the rails constantly, I'm not saying not to do it at all, but instead of beating them up constantly, I like the idea of saying, guys, we need you back. We need that good old Republican Party back. The good old Republican Party that believed 47% of the country was automatically going to vote Democrat. And if a Democratic president wins the election, he wins the election or she wins the election only because people are expecting handouts. Let's get back to that Republican Party who believed those things, but at least conceded that the person won the election. I'd rather have a Republican Party that offends 47% of the country and claims Obama only won because he promised handouts than one that doesn't concede when they lose. So I like Democrats calling for a strong and reasonable Republican Party as a counterweight. Now, that being said, I don't need a January 6th commission. I need an investigation. I need hearings. I need a commission into something else. And that something else is the census. No one is talking about the census. Now, I don't want to be that guy that says, I didn't hear it, so that means no one's talking about it, but no one is talking about the census. Why is this important? The census impacts political power for the next 10 years. The census is what's used to create districts like the one that was created for, guess who, Marjorie Taylor Greene in Georgia back in 2010. And after this most recent census, the Republican Party has added new seats in the House so we can expect new districts to be drawn with new Marjorie Taylor Greenes in those districts. But the census also plays a role in how federal funds are allocated for things like health care and education. So if there's an undercount in a particular community, it means less federal funds. What I found to be so interesting and what I discovered as my exclusive investigative findings was the response rate. In 1970, the response rate to the census was 78%. In 1980, it was 75%. In 1990, it dipped down to 65%, and in 2000, it was expected to be 61%, but they got it up to 67% and considered it a great achievement. 2010 was around 65%. So now we have the 2020 census report under the Trump administration. Why don't you take a guess at what the Trump administration said the response rate was to the census? The Trump administration reported they had a 99% response rate to the census. 99%. Actually more than 99%. I think it was 99.8 or 99.9. You know, like a commercial that says something kills 99.9% of all germs. They don't want to say 100% because that'll sound weird. The Trump administration reported a response rate to the census of 99%. And if you're asking yourself, isn't this the same administration that wanted to end the census early and had to be forced by a court to keep counting? Isn't this the same administration that got the Supreme Court to rule in their favor eventually that they could stop counting people? Isn't this the same administration that held up the census, caused all sorts of problems with the census because they were trying to put a citizenship question on the census? During COVID, 99% response rate? Now, I will say there is a difference with this census compared to all the others. This was the first census because of COVID where people were allowed to fill out the census online. I still don't think that gets you to 99%. But let's just assume that maybe that is the difference, so I don't sound like I'm trying to create a conspiracy theory here. Okay, let's accept that the Trump administration during COVID actually got a 99% response rate on the census because people were able to fill it out online. Well, what's the next most obvious question? If you're worried about allowing people to vote online because of fraud, why would you allow people to fill the census out online and not worry about fraud? The results of an election last 2 years, 4 years, 6 years. The results of a census, the effect of a census, are for 10 years. You're telling me you're going to allow a Republican administration to get away with saying we did an incredible job, got a 99% response rate from the American people on the census, but no, people can't vote online. As far as I can tell, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, if you're still around, Senator Schumer, I don't know, forget about the 1-6 commission and get these answers for me. Are you going to allow people to vote online based on the great success from the census, or are you going to explain to us how you got a 99% response rate? That's my exclusive. As far as I know, no one else is talking about it. Thanks for listening. That's the show. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope everyone enjoys their Memorial Day weekend. Stay safe. A lot of craziness going out there nowadays. A lot of craziness. Stay safe. Enjoy yourself. It'll be nice to get out without the mask on, huh? Yeah. No mask. Get that vaccine. I can't imagine anyone who doesn't want to get the vaccine. I just don't understand it. It's so nice to feel more comfortable around people. Feel like you don't have to wash your hands every 10 seconds. You can buy groceries, bring them home, just eat them. I don't know. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at @comparison_show. @comparison_show. Visit the website. Like I said, I will put up those articles I talked about and maybe some other clips from video clips that I played during the show. TheComparisonGroup.com. TheComparisonGroup.com. And you can find the show on Apple and on Spotify. Have a great weekend.